What's good, everybody, and welcome to First Look, the series where we see how some of the draft's top prospects have fared early on in their seasons. In this one, we've got one of my favorites, Auburn's Jabari Smith Jr. Jabari is a 6'10", 220-pound sharpshooting forward with loads of versatility and potential to grow his game. He developed extremely well over his years in high school, became a 5-star prospect, and the highest ranked player to ever commit to Auburn. He's off to a great start this season, doing work and generating serious buzz at the highest parts of next year's draft. Let's go ahead and get into some of the pieces of his game. It would be a crime to start anywhere else than with Jabari Smith's three-point shooting ability. Jabari is one of the better shooting big prospects that we've seen. He's at about a 45% clip on 5 attempts a game. He's got a fluid, quick, and high release, and he's done it in a few different ways. He's gotten it off on regular spot ups, as the pop or ghost man on screens, or just relocating to the open area. He's been one of the best catch and shoot shooters in the country, shooting just over 48%, which is good enough for 31st overall of those with at least 30 attempts. Guys like Ron Harper Jr., Young Jun Lee, and Julian Strawther are right behind him. But the most impressive part might just be what he's shown off the dribble. In the second game of the season, this was the eye catcher. He takes it off the glass, pushes the break with no hesitation, and just decides to go ahead and smoothly pull up while under the pressure of being down 6 in the first half to an inferior team. A similar thing happens here. He secures the loose ball, notices his man running all the way down into the paint, throws it over to the left hand, and gets right into that thing, again with no hesitation. Like a few of the other top forward or big man prospects in this class, Jabari Smith is someone who can routinely take the ball off the glass and get it into the half court. Now, he's still a big, definitely a secondary ball handler rather than like a point forward type, but the potential to grow here is immense. We can talk about what came out of this play, but there aren't a ton of 6'10", 18-year-olds that can and are confident enough to handle it against pressure in a full court like this. While Jabari is not exactly a big-time playmaker, he's had some excellent live ball passes in transition and a few in the half court that have caught my eye. And against Syracuse, he absolutely tore up that zone with
Smith up top, beautiful
100. Georgia Gatorade Player of the Year and Mr. Basketball.
Oh! Jimmy Boeheim still out there, buddy.
Out of Detroit. Backdoor, Cambridge.
We talked about the three-point shooting and the little he's done off the dribble there so far, but he's currently capable of a bit more handling creation-wise from the mid-range. He's got real upside to his face-up and post-fade game, and as I'm sure you've noticed if you watched him, the jab is a big part of what he does. We'll talk a little more about the totality of his offensive game later, but I like the promise.
Nebraska being short-handed. Limited a little bit more.
To Smith. The turnover.
In the second half, but it's because of the man-to-man pressure defense.
Smith with the
top 5 pick that got on the floor. I think that exemplifies what type of culture that they have at Auburn.
Coach Drew has just reloaded this year. Jimmy Dykes thinks they have an opportunity.
One of Jabari Smith Jr.'s biggest assets is his ability to defend his space at 6'10" and contain a variety of players. He can definitely still improve here, but the way he's kept opponents at bay is a definite plus, and his effort and motor is noticeably more consistent than some of his counterparts.
Intentionally fouled. He said, no, play it out. Trusting his instincts as a coach.
For his third foul. That's not the way Auburn wanted to start the half.
Making his 9th start of the season. Give him a little beat down low, and Jalen Gabadon. That bucket.
They needed the energy to get their fans fired up in the jungle.
Tigers lead by 2. Great.
And right here, this is the versatility put into one play. He's got a guard on the wing and they get into pick and roll. They decide to switch and he gets right into denying on the high side, ultimately getting the deflection. Now this was an awful foul call here, giving him 3. Watch the way he closed out and then closed the gap knowing his opponent was looking for the 3. And he ultimately got a block as he got ball first. Despite the kind of stereotype or maybe expectation that comes along with a lot of bigs, with his frame that can really shoot it, Jabari Smith is one heck of a rebounder or possession finisher. He's consistently meeting his man for the box off, rotating down to help the contester, and even when he doesn't get the board in the box score, he's made an impact on the possession. That's something I really like about him that might go unnoticed on first glance, and that you're probably not going to pick up on in the highlight reel. He's not much of a threat on the offensive glass, partly because of his role, but he does his job really well on the other end. Despite having the measurables and athletic attributes of the sort of 3-and-D format that's always been coveted, and hasn't really shown the instincts when it comes to blocking shots. This is one of the main areas I think he can continue to improve throughout the season and throughout his career to potentially add worlds more value to his game. But when thinking about this, it's probably one of the toughest areas to develop in. And related to this, I'm not 100% sure how much 5 I see him playing in the future. I wouldn't rule it out depending on how he develops physically, because he has been solid individually on some more traditional centers. But in the modern NBA, it's tough if you're not a presence as the backline of defense. When you look at him offensively, Jabari's selling point comes from his 3-point shooting, of course, the versatility, handle potential, but I want to see if he shows anything else significant as a post scoring threat, a lob threat, a roll man, and the biggest of them all, as a driver. I think some people are being a bit too nearsighted with him in that department because he is 18 and has shown flashes of getting to the cup, but it's definitely something he's going to have to work on. Some of the post-scoring stuff can be chalked up to where he's at physically, but that's more long-term and certainly isn't going to happen this season. And he's also not a guy who's like really shown the baby hook or an up and under or step through. That's just not really his game right now. Jabari does take some ill-advised contested shots and has just a bit of tunnel vision at times. There are moments where you can just see him predetermine things or take those contested jumpers off the jab. It goes back to what we talked about with him as a driver. The tools and potential are there, especially with who's matched up on him in some of these games, but he's got to do a better job of seeing what's in front of him and taking advantage. He's only taken a total of 19 shots at the rim in the half court through 9 whole games, which probably makes it the #1 area I'm watching with him going forward. I think as the season progresses, we'll learn more about what he really can and can't do, but at the moment you kind of have to nitpick just a little bit. We won't go into depth about like his second jump or explosiveness at the basket, but that's something we could talk about a little bit too. He's not a perfect player, but for what he does and what he can be, I'm a fan. Many of the games in the SEC will be good to watch, but I'm especially looking forward to seeing Jabari go up against the array of future NBA talent at LSU, many of which hang their hat on the defensive end at the moment. I think that'll be a very good challenge for him. And then against teams like Kentucky, Arkansas, and of course Alabama, which looks like one of the better teams in the country. They've got pro-level guards and a few different players that they'll defend him with. And schematically, I like what Nate Oates is capable of. And just overall, I'm interested to see what happens when teams decide to run him off the line completely, because when you're shooting 45% on great volume, that's going to be very high on the scouting report in SEC play. If you didn't know, Jabari Smith Jr. is the son of former LSU standout and NBA player Jabari Smith Sr. He didn't have the longest career in the league, but he's poured his experiences in the game into his son.
We introduce our love for whatever we love to our kids. Whether they decide to follow suit or not, it's totally up to them. But, you know, I gave him everything I had for his basketball. He immediately fell in love with it because when they was young, when both of them was young, I was still playing. So they automatically gravitated to it and ultimately, you know, fell in love with basketball.
I'm a big fan of Jabari Smith's potential as a player. At this point, I'd say he's probably a lock for the top 3 to 4 in the draft and will make a significant run at being the #1 pick. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and comment down below what you think of Jabari's game. Plenty of more of these on the way, so stay tuned. I'm Keandre, this is Hoop Intellect, and I'm out.
I know for sure I can't change the course. this ride.